The storm hit New Hana just after midnight. Rain hammered against the research outpost's metal walls like bullets. Wind screamed through the canyon below. Dr. Taeyang Park sat at his desk reviewing data on his computer screen. He had been studying the native dragons for 3 years now, always from a safe distance. The creatures were beautiful but deadly. Everyone knew the rules. Stay away from dragon territory, never approach their nests, and absolutely never make direct contact. The lights flickered. Taeyang looked up from his work. His assistant, Hana Choi, was organizing sample containers across the room. She glanced at him with worried eyes. "This storm is getting worse," she said. "Maybe we should move to the emergency shelter." Before Taeyang could answer, an explosion of sound shattered the night. Metal screamed as something massive tore through the reinforced outer wall. Alarms blared throughout the facility. Red emergency lights bathed everything in blood-colored shadows. Taeyang jumped to his feet, his heart pounding. A dragon crashed through the barrier. Not just any dragon, but one of the largest Taeyang had ever seen. Her scales gleamed like polished copper even in the dim light. She was at least 15 meters long, with wings that scraped against the ceiling. But she was not attacking. She moved carefully, almost gently, despite her enormous size. In her claws she carried something small. A hatchling. The baby dragon looked no bigger than a large dog. Its scales should have been bright and colorful, but they were blackened and twisted. The smell of infection filled the air. The hatchling made weak, pitiful sounds. The mother dragon moved forward slowly. Her eyes met Taeyang's. They were intelligent eyes, filled with something he recognized immediately: desperate fear. The same fear he had seen in the eyes of parents throughout the galaxy when their children were dying. She set the hatchling down at Taeyang's feet with infinite care. Then she made a sound unlike anything Taeyang had heard before. It was not a roar or a growl. It was crying. The massive creature was weeping. Tears actually fell from her enormous eyes, splashing on the floor. Hana grabbed Taeyang's arm. "We need to call security. We need to evacuate. Protocol says—" "Look at her," Taeyang interrupted, his voice quiet. "She's not here to hurt us. She's asking for help." He knelt beside the hatchling. Up close he could see the problem clearly. A piece of human mining equipment was lodged deep in the small dragon's chest. The metal fragment was leaking toxins into the hatchling's system. The wound was infected, spreading like poison through the baby's body. Without treatment, the hatchling would die within hours. The mother dragon collapsed. She was exhausted, probably from flying through the storm while carrying her dying child. But even as she lay on the floor, her head turned to watch Taeyang. Her eyes never left him. There was a question in those eyes, a plea. "Hana," Taeyang said, standing up. "Help me move them to the medical bay." "Are you insane?" Hana's voice went up an octave. "That thing could kill us both with one swipe of her claw." "That thing is a mother trying to save her child," Taeyang said. He looked at his assistant. "I need your help, please." Hana stared at him for a long moment. Then she looked at the crying dragon and the dying hatchling. Something in her face softened. "You're going to get us both killed," she muttered, but she moved to help. The medical bay doors slid open just as Commander Borashin arrived with 4 armed guards. The commander was a hard woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She took one look at the dragons and pulled out her communicator. "Dr. Park, step away from those creatures immediately. That is a direct order." Taeyang carefully lifted the hatchling. It was heavier than it looked and warm despite the infection. "Commander, this hatchling is dying. I can save it." "You are violating quarantine protocols," Bora said coldly. "You are endangering this entire facility. I could have you arrested." "Then arrest me after I finish surgery." Taeyang walked toward the medical bay, carrying the hatchling. The mother dragon tried to stand but was too weak. She made that crying sound again, softer this time. "Guards, stop him," Bora ordered. But the guards hesitated. They could see what was happening. A mother begging for her child's life. A doctor trying to help. It was a story as old as time itself, even if one of the players was a dragon. Taeyang turned to face the commander. "I became a doctor to save lives, Commander. All lives. If you want to shoot me for that, go ahead. But you'll have to do it while I'm operating because I'm not stopping." Bora's jaw tightened. She was about to give another order when Hana stepped forward. "Commander, the outpost has external cameras. This is being recorded. If you stop a doctor from saving a dying child, even a dragon child, Earth will know about it." "Is that the story you want people to see?" The commander's eyes narrowed, but she lowered her communicator. You have 12 hours, Dr. Park. If either of those dragons shows any sign of aggression, I'm sealing this section and flooding it with knockout gas. Understand? Understood, Taeyang said, already moving into the medical bay. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Hana helped Taeyang set up the surgical equipment. The medical bay was designed for humans, not dragons, but Taeyang worked with what he had. He placed the hatchling on the largest examination table and began scanning the wound. The mother dragon dragged herself to the doorway of the medical bay. She could not fit her entire body inside, but she positioned herself so she could see everything. Her massive head rested on the floor just inside the door. Her eyes tracked every movement Taeyang made. Hana, I need you to run the vitals through the AI, Taeyang said, pulling on surgical gloves. See if it can translate any sounds the mother makes. She might know her child's anatomy better than we do. Hana's fingers flew over the computer. That's actually brilliant. Connecting now. Taeyang began the surgery. He had never operated on a dragon before. Their internal structure was different from any creature he had studied. One wrong cut could kill the hatchling instantly. His hands moved carefully, precisely. He used laser scalpels to open the wound and extract the metal fragment. The mother dragon made a low humming sound. The AI on Hana's computer began displaying symbols and rough translations. She's telling you to go deeper but angle left, Hana said, reading the screen. There's a secondary air chamber 2 centimeters from where you're cutting. Taeyang adjusted his approach. Thank you, he said, not sure if he was talking to Hana or the mother dragon. Maybe both. The surgery lasted 6 hours. Taeyang removed the metal fragment and flushed the infection from the hatchling system. He repaired torn tissue and sealed the wound with biological adhesive. The whole time the mother dragon hummed. The sound seemed to resonate through the room, almost like she was singing to her child. Finally, Taeyang stepped back. The hatchling's vital signs were weak but stable. It was breathing regularly. The blackened scales were already starting to show hints of their natural color, a beautiful blue-green that shimmered in the light. The mother dragon lifted her head. Her eyes met Taeyang's again. This time there was no fear in them. There was hope. Taeyang pulled off his gloves, exhausted. Your baby is going to live, he said quietly, knowing she probably could not understand his words but hoping she understood his tone. The hatchling's eyes fluttered open. It made a small chirping sound. The mother dragon responded with a soft trill that sounded almost like a lullaby. Taeyang sat down heavily, his legs suddenly weak. He had just performed surgery on an alien creature while its massive, deadly mother watched. By all logic, he should be dead. Instead, he had saved a life. Hana brought him water. Her hands were shaking. That was the craziest thing I've ever seen. Taeyang drank the water and watched the mother dragon gently touch her snout to her hatchling. Maybe, he said. But it was the right thing to do. Outside, the storm continued to rage. But inside the medical bay, something impossible had just happened. A human had helped a dragon. And somehow Taeyang knew this was only the beginning. The hatchling crashed twice during the night. Both times Taeyang brought it back. He worked without sleep, monitoring every heartbeat, every breath. The mother dragon never moved from her position at the doorway. She watched everything with those intelligent copper eyes. By morning, Taeyang looked like a ghost. His eyes were red from exhaustion. His hands shook from too much coffee and too little rest. But the hatchling was stable. More than stable. It was actually improving. Hana arrived with breakfast she had forced him to accept. You need to eat something or you'll collapse. Taeyang took the food but barely tasted it. He was watching the monitors, checking the hatchling's vital signs for the 100th time. Its immune system is incredible. The infection should have taken days to clear, but it's almost gone already. Maybe it's not just the medicine, Hana said. She pointed at the mother dragon. She hasn't stopped humming since the surgery. Look at the readings. Taeyang studied the data. Hana was right. Whenever the mother dragon hummed, the hatchling's healing accelerated. The sound created some kind of bioresonance effect, stimulating the young dragon's cells to repair themselves faster. This is amazing, Taeyang breathed. This is something completely new. Dragons have biological healing abilities we never knew about. The mother dragon's humming changed pitch slightly. The AI on the computer screen displayed new symbols. Hana read them aloud. She's asking if her child will live. Taeyang walked over to the mother dragon. Up close, she was even more impressive. Her scales were like polished metal. Her eyes were the size of dinner plates. One snap of her jaws could cut him in half. But Taeyang felt no fear. "Yes," he said clearly, looking into those enormous eyes. "Your baby will live." The dragon's eyes closed for a moment. When they opened again, something had changed. She made a soft sound, almost like a sigh of relief. Then she did something that made Taeyang's heart stop. She reached out with her massive head and gently touched her snout to his forehead. The contact was brief, but electric. Taeyang felt warmth spread through his body, and for just a second he saw images flash through his mind. Mountains. A city carved from stone. Dragons flying in complex patterns through crystal caverns. A sense of belonging, of family. Then the connection broke. The dragon pulled back, watching him with what could only be described as approval. The AI went crazy, displaying symbols and translations faster than Hana could read them. Finally, it settled on 3 words. Kin bond. Highest honor. What just happened? Taeyang asked, touching his forehead where the dragon had pressed. Hana's eyes were wide. According to the AI's database, a kin bond is what dragons do with their closest family members. She just claimed you as family, Taeyang. She made you part of her clan. Before Taeyang could process this, alarms blared throughout the facility. Commander Bora Shin's voice came over the intercom, sharp and angry. "Dr. Park, we have a situation. Get to the main conference room immediately." Taeyang looked at the hatchling, then at the mother dragon. "I can't leave them." "I'll stay," Hana said. "Go deal with whatever this is." The main conference room had been converted into a command center. Multiple screens showed news feeds from Earth and the other colonies. Commander Bora stood in the center, her face dark with anger. Standing next to her was a man in an expensive suit. He had the look of someone used to getting exactly what he wanted. "Dr. Park," the man said, extending his hand. "I'm Director Quan Lee, representing Didn'tHFY Interstellar. We need to talk about your little pet project." Taeyang ignored the handshake. "Those dragons are not a pet project. That hatchling was dying, and you saved it. Very touching." Quan's smile did not reach his eyes. "Unfortunately, you've created a significant problem for this colony. Do you have any idea how much attention this has generated?" He gestured at the screens. Every major news network in human space was showing footage of the surgery. Somehow the outpost security cameras had live-streamed everything. Images of Taeyang operating on the hatchling while the mother dragon watched had gone viral across the galaxy. "People are calling you a hero," Quan continued. "They're saying you've proven that peaceful contact with the dragons is possible. Do you understand how damaging that narrative is to our operations here?" "Damaging?" Taeyang stared at him. "You mean it's damaging to your profit margins? You want to keep mining in dragon territory without anyone questioning it?" Quan's smile disappeared. "The mining operations on New Hana generate billions in revenue. They employ thousands of workers. And they're located in some of the richest mineral deposits we've ever found, which happen to be in the mountains where the dragons nest. So you've been deliberately destroying their homes," Taeyang said quietly. "That metal fragment in the hatchling? That was from one of your explosives." "Regrettable collateral damage," Quan said with a shrug. "The dragons are animals, Dr. Park, dangerous ones. They've killed 17 miners in the past year alone." "Because you're destroying their children." Taeyang's voice rose. "They're defending their families just like any parent would." Commander Bora stepped between them. "Enough, Director Lee, what exactly do you want?" "The corporation wants Dr. Park transferred off-world immediately. We also want both dragons removed from this facility and returned to the wild. And we want all research data regarding dragon intelligence and communication destroyed." "You want to cover this up," Taeyang said. "You want people to keep thinking dragons are mindless animals so you can keep taking their land." "I want to protect thousands of jobs and a multi-billion credit operation," Quan shot back. "Your heroic gesture is going to cost lives, Dr. Park. When the mining shuts down, where do you think those workers will go? What do you think happens to colonies that can't sustain themselves economically?" Taeyang had no answer for that. The economics were real. The colony needed the mining revenue to survive. "However," Quan continued, his smile returning, "the public pressure is significant. So the corporation is willing to make a compromise. You can keep the dragons here until the hatchling is fully healed. Then they go back to the wild, you transfer to another posting, and we all move forward. The alternative is that I use my authority to shut down this entire research outpost and have you brought up on charges of violating quarantine protocols." "You can't do that," Hana's voice came from the doorway. She walked in carrying a datapad. Actually, he can't do any of that, Commander. I've been doing some research. Dr. Park didn't violate quarantine protocols because those protocols specifically exempt emergency medical situations, and the Interstellar Medical Ethics Board has already issued a statement supporting his actions. She handed the datapad to Commander Bora, who read it and actually smiled for the first time since Taiyang had met her. "It seems you don't have as much power here as you thought, Director Lee," Bora said. "Dr. Park stays. The dragons stay. And if you try to interfere with medical treatment again, I'll file a formal complaint with the Colonial Authority." Kwan's face turned red. "This isn't over, Commander. The corporation has friends in very high places." "I'm sure they do," Bora said coolly. "But right now the entire galaxy is watching. So unless you want to be the villain in this story, I suggest you leave my facility." After Kwan left, Commander Bora turned to Taiyang. "You've started something here, Doctor. I hope you're ready for where it leads." Taiyang returned to the medical bay to find the hatchling sitting up for the first time. Its scales were brighter now, showing beautiful patterns of blue and green. When it saw Taiyang, it made a happy chirping sound. The mother dragon hummed again, and this time Taiyang understood it differently. She was not just healing her child. She was teaching it that this human could be trusted. The hatchling tried to stand on wobbly legs. It took a few steps, then stumbled. Taiyang caught it before it fell. The small dragon looked up at him with bright, curious eyes. Then it did something extraordinary. It breathed on him. Not fire, but a warm puff of air that smelled like cinnamon and ozone. The mother dragon made an approving sound. "What does that mean?" Taiyang asked, looking at Hana. She checked the AI. "It's a greeting. A sign of trust. I think the hatchling just decided you're part of its family too." Taiyang carefully set the young dragon back on the examination table. He looked at the mother, then at her child, and felt something shift inside him. These were not animals. They were people. Different from humans, yes, but intelligent, emotional, and capable of forming bonds. "We can't let them go back to a war zone," Taiyang said quietly. "Then what do you suggest?" Hana asked. Taiyang thought about Kwan's threats, about the mining operations, about the 17 dead workers and the countless dragons who had lost their homes and children. "I suggest we find another way," he said. "There has to be a path where humans and dragons can coexist. We just have to be brave enough to walk it." The hatchling chirped again and its mother hummed in response. Outside, the sun was rising over New Hana, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. A new day was beginning, and with it the possibility of something that had never existed before. Peace between two species who had only known conflict. Taiyang just had to figure out how to make it real. 3 weeks passed. The hatchling grew stronger every day. It learned to walk properly, then to run. It started making more complex sounds, almost like it was trying to talk. Taiyang spent every spare moment with the young dragon and its mother, learning their language of hums and trills and gentle touches. The mother dragon, whose name translated roughly to Mira, began showing Taiyang images. She would press her snout to his forehead, and suddenly his mind would fill with pictures and feelings. At first, the experience was overwhelming, but Taiyang learned to relax into it, to let the images come. Through these shared visions, he saw things no human had ever witnessed. Dragon cities carved deep into the mountains with chambers that glowed with natural light. Dragons gathering in great councils, debating and discussing like any civilized species. Families raising their young, teaching them to fly and hunt and think. He also saw the destruction, human mining operations tearing through nesting grounds, explosions collapsing ancient tunnels, dragon children dying from toxic chemicals leaking into their water supply. Mira's people were not attacking humans out of mindless aggression. They were fighting for survival. One morning, Taiyang woke to find Mira standing over him. She made a specific sound, one he had learned meant, "Come." She wanted him to go somewhere with her. "Is this safe?" Hana asked, watching as Taiyang prepared to leave the outpost. "Probably not," Taiyang admitted, "but I have to see what she wants to show me." Commander Bora was less enthusiastic. "You're talking about leaving the safety of this facility to go into dragon territory. That's suicide, Dr. Park." "Mira has claimed me as kin," Taiyang said. "She won't let anything happen to me." "You're betting your life on that assumption." "Yes," Taiyang said simply. "I am." Mira led him into the mountains. She flew slowly, allowing Taiyang to follow on a hoverbike. The hatchling, who Taeyang had started calling Hanul, rode on his mother's back, watching everything with bright, curious eyes. They flew for 2 hours, going deeper into the mountain range than any human had ever traveled. Finally, they reached a massive cliff face. Mira landed and pressed her claws against the rock in a specific pattern. Part of the cliff swung inward, revealing a tunnel. Inside was a city that took Taeyang's breath away. The cavern was enormous, easily the size of a small human city. Crystals in the walls gave off a soft, natural light. Buildings were carved directly from the stone, with graceful curves and intricate designs. And everywhere there were dragons. Hundreds of them. They stopped and stared as Mira led Taeyang deeper into the city. Some made aggressive sounds. Others just watched in silence. Taeyang forced himself to keep walking, to show no fear. Mira brought him to the largest chamber where 7 massive dragons sat in a circle. They were clearly old. Their scales dulled with age, but their eyes sharp with intelligence. This was the council that governed the dragon people. One dragon, larger than the others with scales like dark iron, spoke. The sound was deep and resonant. Mira translated by touching Taeyang's forehead, and the words appeared in his mind. "This is the human who saved your hatchling?" "Yes, Elder Tor," Mira's voice echoed in Taeyang's head. "He risked everything to help us. He has proven that not all humans are enemies." Another dragon, this one with silver scales, leaned forward. "One act of kindness does not erase years of destruction. The humans have killed dozens of our children. They poison our water and collapse our homes." "I know," Taeyang said aloud, not sure if they could understand him but needing to speak. "And I'm sorry. What the mining corporation has done is wrong, but not all humans agree with it. Many of us want peace," Mira translated his words. The council discussed among themselves, their voices creating a complex harmony of sound. Finally, Elder Tor spoke again. "If you truly want peace, human, then you must help us stop the mining operations that destroy our homes."
"Can you do this?"
Taeyang thought about Quan Li and Didn'tHFY, about the billions in profit and the thousands of workers who depended on those jobs. "I can try," he said honestly, "but it won't be easy. The corporation is powerful." "Then we will continue to fight," Tor said, "and more will die. Human and dragon alike." The meeting ended without resolution. Mira flew Taeyang back to the outpost in silence. He could feel her sadness, her worry for her people and her child. When they landed, Commander Bora was waiting with a security team. "Dr. Park, I need you to come with me now." "What's wrong?" "Everything." The command center was chaos. Every screen showed news reports of a human settlement under attack. Buildings were burning. People were screaming. And in the footage, clear as day, were dragons attacking. "This happened 2 hours ago," Bora said. 15 people are dead, 30 more injured, and the colonial government is calling for a full military response against the dragons. Taeyang stared at the screens in horror. "No, this doesn't make sense." The council was willing to talk. "Why would they attack now?" "Maybe because talk is cheap," Bora said. "Or maybe your new friends were playing you all along." But something felt wrong. Taeyang studied the footage more carefully. The attacking dragons were moving strangely, almost mechanically. Their attack patterns were too organized, too precise. "Hana, can you analyze this footage?" he asked. "Something's not right." Hana worked at her computer for 20 minutes while Taeyang waited, his stomach in knots. Finally, she looked up, her face pale. "The timestamps are wrong," she said. "This footage was edited. And look at this." She zoomed in on one of the attacking dragons. "That's not a real dragon. It's a drone. A very sophisticated one, but definitely mechanical." "Someone faked the attack," Taeyang breathed. "But who benefits from continued conflict between humans and dragons?" Bora interrupted. Her expression was grim. "Who has billions of credits invested in maintaining the status quo?" "Daehan Interstellar," Taeyang said. "Quan Li." Before they could act on this revelation, alarms blared throughout the outpost. Security cameras showed armed men in black tactical gear approaching the facility. They were not colonial military. They were corporate mercenaries. "They're coming for you," Bora said. "And probably for the dragons too. If they destroy Mira and Hanul, there's no proof of peaceful contact." Taeyang ran for the medical bay. He found Mira already on her feet. Hanul pressed against her side. She could sense the danger. "We have to get them out of here," Taeyang said to Hana. But it was too late. The main doors exploded inward. Mercenaries poured into the facility, weapons raised. They were wearing armor designed specifically to fight dragons, with thermal shields and plasma rifles. Taeyang stepped in front of Mira and Hanul. "You'll have to go through me." The lead mercenary laughed. "That can be arranged, Doctor." Then Hanul did something no one expected. The young dragon, still recovering from its injuries, stepped forward and roared. It was the first real sound it had made, and fire came with it. Small fire, barely more than a torch, but fire nonetheless. The mercenaries hesitated. In that moment of uncertainty, Mira moved. She grabbed Taeyang with one claw and Hanul with the other, then smashed through the medical bay's outer wall. Alarms screamed as the pressure seal broke, but Mira was already flying, her powerful wings carrying them away from the outpost. Plasma fire lit up the night sky behind them. Taeyang hung on desperately as Mira dodged and weaved through the air. He could see more hover vehicles launching from the outpost in pursuit. "They're going to kill us," he shouted over the wind. Mira made a sound that might have been agreement, but she kept flying, heading straight for the mountains and the hidden city. A plasma bolt struck Mira's wing. She roared in pain but kept flying. Another bolt grazed Taeyang's leg and he screamed. The hover vehicles were getting closer. Then from the mountains ahead, dozens of dragons emerged. They flew in formation, a wall of scales and wings in fury. The hover vehicles tried to retreat, but it was too late. The dragons descended on them, not killing but disabling, forcing them to land. Mira landed in the hidden city, exhausted and wounded. Taeyang stumbled off her back, his leg bleeding. Hanul immediately pressed against him, making worried sounds. Elder Tor approached, his expression unreadable. "So human, you have brought war to our doorstep." "No," Taeyang said through gritted teeth. "A corporation brought war. They faked the attack on the settlement to turn humans against dragons. They tried to kill me and Mira to hide the truth. And why should we believe you?" "Because I'm here," Taeyang said. "Because Mira saved my life and I would die to protect her and Hanul. Because we're running out of time, and if we don't work together, everyone loses." Tor studied him for a long moment. Then the old dragon made a sound that might have been a sigh. "Then we must move quickly. War's coming, human. The question is whether we face it as enemies or allies." Taeyang looked at Mira, at Hanul, at the hundreds of dragons watching from the shadows. He thought about Hana and Commander Bora, about the good humans who wanted peace. And he made a choice. "Allies," he said firmly. "We face it as allies." The dragons began to hum, a deep sound that resonated through the entire cavern. It was a sound of acceptance, of agreement. The council had made their decision. Now they just had to survive what came next. Taeyang woke in a chamber carved from crystal. His leg had been treated with a paste made from dragon saliva, which Mira had explained through their mental link had powerful healing properties. The pain was already fading. Hanul was curled up next to him, the young dragon's warm breath keeping him comfortable in the cool cavern. A shadow fell across the entrance. Commander Bora stepped inside, followed by Hana. They both looked exhausted. "You're alive," Bora said. "It almost sounded like an accusation." "Barely," Taeyang replied, sitting up carefully. "How did you get here?" "Your dragon friend sent a messenger," Bora said. "Apparently they decided we needed to talk." "We have proof," Hana said excitedly, holding up a data pad. "I managed to trace the edited footage back to its source. It came from a Daehan interstellar server, and I found financial records showing they purchased military drones 6 months ago. This was planned, Taeyang. They were always going to stage an attack, but why?" Bora asked. "Killing people just to maintain a mining operation seems excessive, even for them." Taeyang stood, wincing slightly. "It's not just about the mines. If humans and dragons make peace, it sets a precedent. Other alien species might expect the same treatment. Corporations would have to actually negotiate instead of just taking what they want." Elder Tor entered the chamber, his massive form filling the space. "The human is correct. This is about power, about whether intelligent beings have rights or whether might alone determines worth." Over the next 3 days, an unlikely alliance formed. Taeyang worked with Commander Bora and the Dragon Council to develop a plan. They needed to expose Daehan Interstellar's crimes and prove that peace between humans and dragons was possible. The key was Dr. Yunji Nam, a famous human diplomat who had successfully negotiated peace between warring colony worlds. If anyone could help them, it was her. Getting a message to Yunji was risky. Any communication could be intercepted by the corporation. But Hana had an idea. She used the outpost's emergency beacon. which was supposed to be used only for catastrophic disasters, to send a coded message directly to Unji's ship. 2 days later, Unji arrived at New Hana in her personal vessel. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for being impossible to manipulate. She took one look at the situation and immediately began organizing a summit. "This is insane," she said, but she was smiling. "A peace summit between humans and dragons. If we pull this off, it'll be historic." But Dahan Interstellar was not going to let it happen without a fight. The night before the summit, explosives went off in the human settlement. Buildings collapsed, fires raged, and witnesses reported seeing dragons in the area. Except this time, people were ready. Security cameras caught the drones in action. Civilians tackled the corporate agents trying to set more explosives. The evidence was overwhelming. Quan Li was arrested along with a dozen other corporate executives. But the damage was done. Anti-dragon sentiment was at an all-time high. Many humans did not care about proof or evidence. They just wanted revenge. The summit began in a neutral zone between the human settlement and the dragon city. A massive tent had been erected, large enough to hold both species. On one side sat the human delegation, Commander Bora, Yunji, colonial representatives, and Taeyang. On the other side sat the Dragon Council, with Mira and Hanul positioned prominently. The humans were nervous. The dragons were suspicious. And in the center of it all sat Taeyang, the bridge between two worlds that had only known conflict. Elder Tor spoke first, his voice resonating through the space. Mira translated for those who could not understand. "We have lived on this world for thousands of years. We have built cities and raised families. We have created art and science. And then you came. You took our land. You killed our children. You treated us like animals. Why should we trust you now?" The human delegates shifted uncomfortably. No one had a good answer. Then Unji stood. "You're right," she said simply. "Everything you said is true. We came to your world and acted like conquerors. We saw you as obstacles instead of people. And we were wrong." The room went silent. Dragons and humans alike stared at Unji. "But here's the thing," she continued. "Humans make mistakes, terrible ones. We're selfish and short-sighted and sometimes cruel. But some of us, enough of us, are also capable of recognizing when we're wrong and trying to fix it. That's what makes us human." She gestured at Taeyang. This man risked everything to save a dying hatchling. He didn't think about politics or profit. He just saw a mother begging for help and chose compassion. That's humanity at its best. And if we can build on that, if we can choose to see each other as equals instead of enemies, then maybe we can create something better than what came before. A dragon from the council, one with pale blue scales, spoke. "Pretty words. But words are easy. Actions are what matter." Before anyone could respond, Hanul stood up. The young dragon was still small compared to the adults, but it moved with confidence. It walked to the center of the space between both delegations, then it spoke. Not in dragon language, but in broken human words. "Help. Save me." The words were rough, clearly difficult to pronounce. "Human, Taeyang, kin," the dragons gasped. Hanul was speaking the human language, something that should have been impossible. "Taught me," Hanul continued, struggling with each word. "Kind, good, not enemy, friend." Mira made a sound of approval. "My child speaks truth. This human showed mercy when he could have shown fear. He chose life over law. If a human can learn to see us as people, then we can learn to see them the same way." An old dragon, one of the council members, challenged her. "And if they betray us? If this is just another trick?" "Then we fight," Mira said simply. "But we fight knowing we tried for peace. We fight knowing that our children, like Hanul, might have a chance at something better. Is that not worth the risk?" Elder Tor was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Taeyang. "You have not spoken, human who saved the hatchling. What do you say?" Taeyang stood slowly. Every eye in the tent was on him. "I'm just a doctor," he said quietly. "I'm not a politician or a warrior, but I know this. Every time I see Hanul, I remember that night in the storm. I remember a mother crying for her child. And I remember making a choice to help, even though it was dangerous and against the rules." He looked at Mira, then at Hanul. "I don't know if peace is possible. I don't know if we can overcome years of conflict and mistrust. But I know that if we don't try, if we choose fear over hope, then nothing will ever change. Our children, human and dragon alike, will inherit a war that neither side can win." He paused, gathering his courage. Hanul called me kin. That's a sacred bond among your people. I want to honor that bond by fighting for a future where human children and dragon hatchlings can grow up together, learning from each other instead of fearing each other. That's the world I want to live in. That's the world worth fighting for. The silence that followed was deafening. Then slowly Hanul walked over to Taeyang and pressed against his leg, making a soft humming sound. Mira stood and touched her snout to Taeyang's forehead, sharing an image of dragons and humans working side by side, building something new together. Elder Tor watched this display. Finally he spoke. The hatchling has chosen. The mother has chosen. And perhaps it is time for the rest of us to choose as well. The summit lasted 3 more days. There were arguments and setbacks. Some dragons wanted to continue fighting. Some humans refused to give up the mining operations. But slowly, carefully, compromises were reached. The new Hana Accord was signed on the 7th day. It established protected nesting zones where no mining could occur. It created shared resource management with dragons and humans working together to extract minerals without destroying habitats. It set up communication channels and dispute resolution processes. And most importantly, it recognized the dragons as an intelligent species with full rights under colonial law. Huan Li and the other Daehan interstellar executives were charged with crimes against sentient beings, fraud, and attempted murder. The corporation was fined billions and forced to restructure its operations on New Hana. When it was over, Taeyang sat outside the summit tent, exhausted but hopeful. Hanul curled up next to him, the young dragon now almost the size of a small horse. Mira rested nearby, her copper scales gleaming in the setting sun. "We did it," Hana said, sitting down beside them. "We actually did it." "We started it," Taeyang corrected. "The hard part comes next. Making it work." Commander Bora approached, looking more relaxed than Taeyang had ever seen her. "The colonial government wants you to stay on as the official human-dragon liaison. They're offering full funding for your research and diplomatic authority." Taeyang looked at Mira and Hanul. Through their bond, he could feel their hope, their cautious optimism. "I'll do it," he said. "On one condition. Hanul comes with me. Someone needs to represent the dragon perspective. And who better than the hatchling who started all of this?" Hanul chirped happily and breathed a small puff of warm air that smelled like cinnamon. Peace was fragile. It would take work and patience and countless small acts of courage. But as Taeyang watched the sun set over New Hana, casting the world in gold and purple light, he believed it was possible. One life had changed everything. Now it was time to see what they could build together. 5 years had passed since that stormy night when Mira crashed through the outpost walls. New Hana looked different now. The research facility had expanded into a proper diplomatic center. Human buildings stood alongside dragon structures, creating an architectural style that belonged to both species and neither. Taeyang stood at his office window, watching dragons and humans work together in the valley below. A human engineer consulted with a dragon architect about building placement. Dragon hatchlings played with human children in a shared learning center. It was not perfect, but it was real. Hanul landed on the balcony, no longer a small hatchling but a full-grown dragon. The young dragon was magnificent, with scales that shifted between blue and green depending on the light. Hanul had become Taeyang's partner in every sense, working as a co-researcher and translator. "Message from Terra Nova," Hanul said in clear human language. Years of practice had eliminated most of the rough edges. "The situation has gotten worse." Taeyang's stomach tightened. Terra Nova was another colony world where humans and dragons shared space. But unlike New Hana, they had never managed peace. The conflict there had been escalating for months. He read the message on his datapad. A plague had broken out on Terra Nova. It was killing both humans and dragons. The death toll was already in the thousands. But because neither side trusted the other, they refused to work together on finding a cure. "They want our help," Taeyang said quietly. "Will you go?" Hanul asked. Taeyang thought about the comfortable life he had built here. He thought about the dangers of getting involved in another world's conflict. Then he thought about that night 5 years ago, when he had made a choice to help despite the risks. "Yes," he said, "we have to try." The delegation from New Hana arrived on Terra Nova 3 days later. Taeyang brought Hana, who was now his chief medical researcher. Yunji came as diplomatic advisor. Mira and Elder Tor led the dragon contingent. And Hanul, of course, stayed close to Taeyang. What they found was worse than the report suggested. The plague had started in a human settlement but quickly spread to the dragon population. The symptoms were horrific: fever, lesions, and eventually organ failure. Humans blamed dragons for spreading it. Dragons blamed humans for creating it. And while they argued, people died. The colonial governor, a tired man named Daehyun, met them at the spaceport. "Dr. Park, I hope you can work a miracle. Because if this plague isn't stopped soon, Terra Nova will be a dead world." Taeyang and his team set up a research facility in neutral territory. They collected samples from both infected humans and dragons. Hana ran analysis after analysis. The results were disturbing. "This is not a natural disease," she said on the third day. "Someone engineered this. Look at the genetic markers. It's designed to attack both human and dragon immune systems." "Who would do such a thing?" Yoonji asked, horrified. Taeyang had a terrible suspicion. "Someone who wants both species to die? Someone who sees coexistence as a threat." They found their answer in encrypted files on a hidden server. A radical human group called the Purity Front had created the plague. They believed humans should be the only intelligent species in the galaxy, but the plague had mutated, becoming far more dangerous than its creators had intended. Now everyone was at risk. The leaders of the Purity Front were arrested, but that did not stop the plague. They needed a cure, and they needed it fast. Taeyang worked around the clock with both human doctors and dragon healers. The problem was that human medicine and dragon bioresonance healing worked on completely different principles. Every time they thought they had found a solution, it would fail when applied to the other species. On the 7th day, Taeyang collapsed from exhaustion. He woke up in a medical bed with Hanul humming softly beside him. The bioresonance made him feel better almost immediately. "That's it," he said, sitting up suddenly. "Hana, remember when I was operating on Hanul? Mira's humming helped accelerate the healing." "Bioresonance enhancement," Hana said, understanding dawning. "If we combine human treatment with dragon healing, it might work on both species." They tested the theory on volunteers. Human doctors administered medicine, while dragon healers provided bioresonance support. The results were remarkable. Patients who had been dying began to recover within hours. But there was a problem. They did not have enough dragon healers to treat everyone, and many dragons refused to help humans they still saw as enemies. Elder Tor called a meeting of all dragons on Terra Nova. Taeyang was allowed to attend. The old dragon stood before his people, his scales dull with age but his voice still strong. "I have lived for 200 years, Tor said. "I have seen war and death. I have lost children to human weapons and poison. I have every reason to hate them." He paused, looking at Taeyang. "But 5 years ago, I watched a human risk everything to save a hatchling he had never met. I watched him choose compassion when he could have chosen safety. And I learned that even old dragons can be wrong." Tor turned back to his people. "The humans of Terra Nova are not our friends. They have done terrible things to us. But this plague was not created by the humans who are suffering now. It was created by extremists who hate us both. If we let it destroy us all because we are too proud to work together, then those extremists win." A younger dragon, scarred from battles, spoke up. "You ask us to help those who killed our families." "No," Mira said, stepping forward. "I ask you to help save children who had nothing to do with those deaths. I ask you to choose the future over the past." Hanul added in both dragon and human language, "I would be dead if a human had not helped me. Now I help others, human and dragon. This is what kin do. This is what family does." Slowly, one by one, dragons volunteered to help. Not all of them, but enough. The medical camps that followed were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Human doctors and dragon healers worked side by side. Patients of both species lay in the same wards. And the cure worked. The death rate dropped dramatically. Taeyang watched it all with tears in his eyes. This was what he had dreamed of that night 5 years ago. Not just coexistence, but true cooperation. Two species working together to save lives. One day, a dragon mother arrived at the medical camp carrying a dying hatchling. The scene was painfully familiar. But this time something different happened. A young human doctor named Jiwan immediately stepped forward. She did not hesitate, did not wait for permission. She simply began treatment, working alongside a dragon healer without fear or hesitation. Taeyang watched from across the camp. Hana stood beside him. "Look at that," she said softly. 5 years ago, you were the only human who would help a dragon. Now it's just normal. That's the real victory," Taeyang said. "Not the treaties or the laws. It's this. People just helping each other because it's the right thing to do. The plague was defeated within a month. Terra Nova signed its own version of the new Hana Accord. The celebration that followed brought humans and dragons together in genuine joy. On the last night before returning home, Taeyang stood on a hill overlooking the settlement. Hanul landed beside him and Mira joined them shortly after. "You changed everything," Mira said, her thoughts flowing directly into Taeyang's mind. "One choice, one act of compassion, and now look." Below them, dragon hatchlings played with human children. Adults of both species talked and laughed together. It was messy and imperfect, but it was beautiful. "I didn't change anything," Taeyang said. "You did. You trusted a human when you had every reason not to. You brought your dying child to someone you should have seen as an enemy." "We both made choices," Hanul added. "Good choices." Yunji joined them on the hill. "The Colonial Authority wants to create a new position, Ambassador for Interspecies Relations. They want you to head it, Taeyang. You would travel to other worlds, help establish contact with new species, prevent conflicts before they start." Taeyang looked at Hanul, then at Mira. "What do you think?" "I think there are many worlds that need what we have learned," Hanul said. "And I think we should teach them." Mira hummed her agreement. "Besides, you are kin. Where you go, we go." The next morning, as Taeyang's ship prepared to leave Terra Nova, a small crowd gathered to see them off. Governor Daehyun shook his hand. "You saved this world, Dr. Park. I don't know how to thank you." "Thank me by making sure it lasts," Taeyang said. "Peace is not something you achieve once and forget. It's something you choose every day." The ship lifted off, heading back to New Hana. Taeyang stood at the window, watching Terra Nova shrink below them. Hanul stood beside him, the dragon's reflection overlapping with his own in the glass. "Do you ever think about that night?" Hanul asked. "The storm, the surgery, the moment everything changed. Every day," Taeyang admitted. "I was so scared. I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew I had to try." "That is the human difference," Hanul said thoughtfully. "You try, even when you are scared, even when you might fail. You choose to try," Taeyang smiled. "We all try, Hanul. Humans and dragons alike. We all choose every day whether to build bridges or walls. I just happened to choose a bridge on a night when it mattered most." Back on New Hana, life continued. Mira had her own family now, with 3 new hatchlings who loved climbing on Taeyang when he visited. The diplomatic center expanded to include representatives from 4 other alien species. The Shared Learning Center graduated its first class of students who had been taught by both human and dragon teachers. And in the medical bay where it all began, a plaque hung on the wall. It showed an image of that stormy night, a massive dragon, a tiny hatchling, and a human doctor making a choice. The inscription read, "In memory of the night when compassion bridged the stars, may we always choose to help, to heal, and to hope." Years later, historians would debate the exact moment when human-dragon relations changed. Some would point to the signing of the new Hana Accord. Others would cite the defeat of the plague on Terra Nova. But Taeyang knew the truth. The moment everything changed was simpler and smaller than that. It was the moment a mother, desperate and terrified, chose to trust a stranger with her most precious treasure. It was the moment a doctor, faced with an impossible situation, chose compassion over caution. It was the moment when 2 beings from different species looked at each other and saw not an enemy, but a person in need of help. That moment, repeated over and over across the galaxy, was what changed everything. And it all started with 1 weeping mother dragon and 1 human who did not hesitate. Standing in his office years later, watching the sunset paint New Hana in gold and purple, Taeyang felt Hanul's familiar presence beside him. The dragon was family now in every way that mattered. "Do you have any regrets?" Hanul asked. Taeyang thought about the danger, the exhaustion, the countless sleepless nights working for peace. He thought about everything he had sacrificed for this dream. Then he looked at Hanul, at the world they had built together, at the future that stretched ahead full of possibility. "Not even one," he said. And together, human and dragon, they watched the sun set on another day of peace.